Hey, it's Tom from Tom's Toons, and in this video, we are gonna tackle repaneling your sheet metal in the railings of your pontoon boat. This one's unique because the sheet metal is on the outside portion of the railing. Stay tuned to watch us tackle this project and take an old boat that had nasty old paneling, it was all beat up, to looking brand new, shiny and clean. Now that we've got the deck trim on, we've got the furniture up and just out of the way, because now we're moving on to these railings. So we've done a video on replacing railing panels, just the sheet metal that's in here. It's just a thin, usually aluminum, sometimes plastic, depends on the boat. This is aluminum. We're gonna be replacing this with more of a beige color, kind of like this goldish metallic beige, the whole thing. So one solid color, make it a little more modern looking. But the tricky part with this boat is, we haven't done this yet, the aluminum is on the outside. So we're gonna have to be really careful, get this bent up as much as we can. This lip is gonna be pretty tender in terms of ability to crack. It's more likely to crack. We'll be really careful. We're just gonna pry it up, get the old sheet metal out to use that as a template for the next piece that's gonna go in, and then we slide it in. We're gonna use a combination of tools. This is probably my favorite right here. It's a Purdy, just a scraper blade, but this allows you to get underneath and pry it up in bigger chunks. And then you can also use the ends when you get underneath there to pry it up for smaller details. So here we are moving right along, got the lip all bent out, got it started to come out, and I even went around, banged on it from the inside all along the edges, because sometimes there's silicone there. There was a sealant adhesive on this whole thing. You got to remember, when they do this at the factory, they lay this sheet right in there. These are open all the way, and then they bend them down once. And they can get away with bending them a couple times, or at least we can, but eventually they crack and break. So that's where we're limited. We can't bend them too far and bend them back. But here's the silly part. There are staples down here. I'm hoping they're just in a few spots. It looks like we've got them up at the top as well, underneath there. So I'm hoping we can just kind of knock the aluminum free of those, get them out of there, so that when we put the aluminum back in, we can slide right in. They did that before they bent the lip down, probably just to hold it all in place at one end, so they could run it the whole way around the curve and so on. Not super fun, but just something you might encounter, so keep that in mind. Those are serious staples. Take a look there. Those are holding that in. Hopefully that's the only place they are, because if I got to deal with that all the way along, it's going to add a lot of time to this. But I just took my Purdy tool, came from the back side, and tapped it with the hammer, and they came right out. So now let's see if we can get this whole panel out in one piece. We'll pull the staples, and then we can flatten this out, lay it on top of the new sheet, and that'll be our stencil. That came right out. Just pushed from the middle. We'll get this cleaned off here, because I just go in and I lay silicone on the edges to keep from rattling. I do silicone kind of every few inches on the inside just to keep anything from rattling. You got metal on metal, it's bound to happen. We got that out pretty smooth, other than the staples. And so now we'll take this piece, we'll lay it on top of a brand new sheet of the beige metallic, and we'll cut it out. Show you how I do that. I use an angle grinder. I just barely score it, and then I can bend it back and forth a couple times and it breaks right off, clean edge. But we'll just try to match this exact, maybe a hair smaller. That's be one suggestion I would make, so that you can get it in there a little bit easier. And we usually just end up kind of bending it in the middle, getting it in the best we can, sliding where we need to, and make it look new again. So we'll get this cleaned up and then get it ready to put the new panel in. So what we're working with here, this is kind of a beige color. This is actually from PMI or fenceforpontoons.com. They sold it in a 24.7 inch height, which should work perfectly for the taller portions of this railing. So I'm gonna have to cut it down for these, but it's gonna work for the tall parts. And then the other size, they have two sizes. This is the taller, the shorter was way too short. So you use what you can, you cut down what you need to. The way that this works, there's a layer to peel on each side. I wait to peel that until everything's cut and it's ready to go into the railing. Then we peel it, because peeling it once it's in the railing is kind of hard too, because everything's pinched in there. You'd almost have to take a razor and cut around the very edge. We've done it, we've tried it both ways. I think peeling it when it's ready to go in is the best way. So we're gonna lay this out. So we're gonna lay the old sheet on top, trace it, cut it, and then insert it. There is one panel done. We had to play around with it a little bit just to get it just right. And you'll see this piece was just really brittle. And as soon as it started to crack down here, the crack went the whole way up. So what we'll do is we'll use some small rivets, aluminum rivets, and we'll get this riveted back in so it looks really nice and clean. And you can expect, if you're doing this at home, you know, I work with a teeny mallet all the way. I just hit it probably 500 times. And it's gonna have just a teeny little bit of wave to it. I don't know if you can even really notice, but you're only gonna see that when you're right up looking down at it. All in all, I think the color looks great. I think it's gonna look really good with these seats when we get it all back together. And if they choose to do some decals on it, that'll just add to the look. But got the big outside corner, it's a big radius. We got that, we're gonna do the other side now. And then we can move to those back railings, which they're a little bit terrifying. It's one big piece of aluminum. It's like 15 feet long. That's why I had to order from fenceforpontoons.com. Again, they've got a relationship with pontoon stuff, so happy to order from them and support them. But they have the right height and the right length. They come in 20-foot sheets to get in and around to the front. We're gonna have to cut out this little shape here. Not too worried about that. Again, we'll take this out carefully so we have a template to start with.
It's gonna be a good day when that's done.
Oh yeah.
Not doing it, but when it's done.
Correct. So we have tackled the front two panels and those look good. We are going to move on now to these big rear panels. So they're mirrored, they're the same. This side is the same as the port side, as the starboard side. This one has the fuel fill, so we'll cut that out. But this is gonna be the bigger challenge, because we gotta take this out, try to keep it in one piece, because there's a little cut contour. I'll show you from this side. You've got this contour cut into it that we're gonna have to replicate. And you can even see from the factory, like this wasn't perfect. This got hit at one point, but that kind of pushed out, so it wasn't in there as secure as a lot of this stuff. I'm not sure how that'll play in, but we got to remove some hardware and whatnot. I got to take that fuel fill out, but we're going to go ahead and make our cutout. Put this part in first, sliding it all in from the opposite side. We did find that dish soap works really well in terms of getting everything sliding easier, and 2 to 3 sets of hands is kind of a must-have on this. Because again, we're going on the outside of the bend. When it's an inside paneling on the inside of the rails, it seems to be a little bit easier than the outside. But we're gonna do our best here, make it look as factory as possible, be really careful, but getting it slid in seems to be the best way to do it, because this stuff can bend and dent. You get little imprints, so you can see here, if you mishandle it. So avoid that at all costs. The best way to do it is to slide it in. On these tight corners, we have the wider radius up on the boat. Already did those. But on these tighter corners, this is going to be your biggest challenge on an outside paneled railing. What we do, in the time lapse, you can see I worked the whole way on the flat part, the straight part. That's easy. It's never easy. That's a lot simpler than the curve. What I'm going to do with that tool, again, if you're doing your railings, go pick one of these up. They're probably 10 or 20 bucks. It will make your life a lot easier. What?
10 or 20 bucks. That thing is expensive.
You're paying like $100 or more per sheet of aluminum. Make your life easier by getting the right tool rather than trying to use something out of your toolbox at home. What are you looking for?
I was going to ask Marty to research it. How much that thing is.
Hey Marty, will you look up how much a Purdy paint scraper tool is at Home Depot? Thank you. So the cool thing about this, you have a sharper edge, and then you have this flat or blunt edge. Both are going to get underneath the railing, but what I can do is work that edge under, and then I'm just going to pull up and peel. I'm going to try to peel back as least amount as possible. I think that's how I should say it. That way I'm not stressing this aluminum where it might crack. So now, as I work my way towards this curve and into the curve, I'm going to put the blunt side back, and I'm going to get it in at an angle. And I'm just going to peel little bits at a time. And you'll see in a second here, when I get into the heart of the curve, I'm not going to be able to get the whole blade in there because it's obviously squared off, and that's rounded curve. So here I'm only getting about half the blade in. And yes, this is where you're gonna get the most wrinkles, but you could go back through and pry in between and square that off a little bit so it's less wrinkly. And then you're gonna really focus on that when you're pounding it back in when the new sheet's in there. But if you see, it's impossible pretty much for me to get the whole blade in. This part just doesn't want to go because it's square blade versus a round edge. And then once I get to the part where it starts to square back out, I can start to work the whole blade in again, peeling back. So when I peel back bigger pieces like that, I don't have all the wavy, riffly stuff. So I'm gonna have to do this same process one more time on the bottom, 2 more times on the top, and that will free everything up to where we'll be able to pull it out. I'm gonna keep working on that so we can release this panel out as well. We'll trace that on the new sheet too. What'd you find, Marty?
10 to 12.
$10 to $12.
Not 10 to 20.
$6.22 on Amazon. So if you know you're doing this, go ahead and order this ahead of time. I love this tool for this project. We officially found out $10 to $12 at the big box stores, $6.22 on Amazon. That's with free shipping, right? Yeah, it's cheap. It's almost like they knew that these were going to be used for pontoon projects at home. They put a bottle opener on there for you. It's like they know you're working on it after work with a case of beer. Thank you, Purdy. No, I don't have a case of beer here at work. That's for home projects. So we've got the old panel clamped down just to try to smooth it out as much as possible, lined it up, squared it up with the factory edge of the new sheet. So we know it's square, and then as I go along, I just push down. This one has obviously this curve to it, which we're gonna have to cut out carefully. But we just push it down as we move with our line to keep it nice and flat. And what I'm gonna do when I get this top sheet off is I'm gonna run my tape measure, because I actually want what I'm gonna cut out to be about 1/8 of an inch. You might be able to get away with 3/16, but I'm gonna try to go 1/8 of an inch smaller than the factory. The reason is at the factory, they can lay a full sheet in there and then they push the edges down. We're sliding it in. We need a little bit of room for play, and there's plenty between the tabs. So I'm gonna try to shrink it down just a teeny bit, make reinstalling it possible. Don't be a knucklehead like me. Put a guard on your angle grinder. One thing you can do once you've got your panels in is just look down the line and see if there's any spots where that lip sticks out. This one looks pretty darn good. If there was a spot kind of like here where it's stuck out just a little bit, we can take our mallet, give it a couple taps, and work it back in. So again, I always tell people this is never gonna be perfect like it did or like it came from the factory, but look at how nice those look. Can't wait to get them all up on the boat. It's gonna look really sharp. Our railings are all back up on the boat, ready to go. We've got seats reinstalled. I'm gonna finish up the console and the electrical, and this boat is a wrap. The railing panels, it is a big project. It's gonna take at least two sets of hands, but to be able to do this cost-wise versus a new railing kit, it is more cost-effective. If your railings themselves are still pretty modern and in good shape, it's a good idea to consider repaneling, and we just want to show you that it's possible even on these outside paneled railings. Thank you so much for watching. Check out the supporters of our channels in the description. You can save some money on Brunt workwear and work boots, and pontoonstuff.com. You can order similar sheet metal to this on their website, along with other colors and all the furniture, flooring, just like this nice teak vinyl. You can get all of that stuff at pontoonstuff.com for your whole project. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.